What is an auteur? Well, it's a bit complicated to say the least. Let's first get the basic definition from Google. My bestest best friend Google. An auteur is someone who has complete creative control over a body of work that they become known as the sole author. Alright, I might have paraphrased that a little bit, but that's what we're going to roll with. Even though everybody knows that there were way more people involved than just the big name. But this term is most often associated with film directors like Quentin Tarantino or Steven Spielberg. But we're not going to talk about those guys today. My parents didn't raise no film enthusiast. They raised a gamer through and through. So this is my outfit for this video. You can't get into the mind of an auteur if you don't dress like one. So that means graphic tee underneath your suit jacket. In the video game world, you have a lot of big name auteurs that are just synonymous with the word. You know them, you love them, but just because someone is well known in the video game industry does not mean that they are in this special group. Bobby Kotick is a big name, not for a good reason. That right there proves my point. Auteurs really only exist in two different industries, movies and video games. Who's talked about most in movies other than the actors or the composers too? That's right, the directors. In video games, who's the most talked about person in games development? That's right, the directors. And they tend to fall into two different categories. One, your auteurs that have a very passionate fan base that loves to dissect every single thing about their games, like the story, the characters, the gameplay, the music. Ooh, the graphics don't look very hot most of the time in these games. And don't even get me started on the performance. They're chugging like Thomas the Tank Engine. Choo 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 indeed. All these aspects serve the purpose of fitting into a singular vision that the fans love to pick apart. But even their most diehard fans can admit that their games have their shortcomings. I mean, do I have to show you the graphics again? These guys usually have a mantra that they like to follow. Think Suda51 with his philosophy of punk video games, injecting the ethos of the punk music scene of the 70s, which was breaking the mold of what was seen as traditional. So creating video games that purposely went in a completely different direction compared to popular trends. So while everybody was going right, Suda and his company Grasshopper Manufacture was going in a f***ing squiggly line direction. And sometimes that can lead to some great success, but most of the time it doesn't. So that leads us to the final characteristic of the first type of video game auteur. So while they have great fan bases that love the games they make dearly, they don't usually do all that well critically or commercially. Grasshopper Manufacture's highest Metacritic score, you guys know Metacritic, my best friend Metacritic, is a tie between one of my favorite games of all time, No More Heroes, and its sequel, No More Heroes 2, Desperate Struggle, which is how I feel playing this f***ing game. At a score of 83. Now I don't personally give a shit about critic scores because just like everything else, it's all subjective. One person could say it sucks, while another thinks it's a masterpiece. It's all just an aggregation of a select few people's opinions. But for the average gamer, they see the score and an 83 is just passable. They think it's not worth their time because of this dumb stigma against any game that isn't a 9 out of 10 or higher. I actually have a script for a video about that very topic that I haven't touched in a few months. I should probably get around to finishing that. The majority of GM's games end up in the 7 out of 10 limbo, with some glaring exceptions, that they often fall through the cracks of the mainstream video game media and the internet gamer zeitgeist. Another one of my favorite games from them just so happens to be the sequel to No More Heroes, the third one. Is it a wholly unique experience that you can get nowhere else? Well, no, because it's a sequel. Still one of the most unique games on the Switch. Nowhere near the best, but definitely one of the most interesting experiences you could have. Then we have critics giving it 6, 7s, and 8s, and it fades away from the gamer's consciousness, unless they're already fans. GameSpot even gave this game a 4. You know what else GameSpot gave a 4? Yeah, one of the most notoriously bad Sonic games has a better score than No More Heroes 3. I swear, I don't care about review scores. Another good example from one of these auteurs is Hitaka Suro, otherwise known as Swery 65. Okay, so I guess having numbers in your name is also a requirement. So does that mean if I put numbers in my channel name, that makes me the auteur of YouTube, or? He has a few games that he's known for, and a few of them are even considered good. The Missing J.J. Macfield and the Island of Memories is a name for a game. In terms of gameplay, it's a pretty simple 2D puzzle platformer, but it has powerful, positive LGBTQ messaging. That being said, I am a straight white man, so I'm not exactly qualified to say whether it's actually good or not. So that's his best game in many people's eyes. But he's by far more well known for another game series, Deadly Premonition. These games run like piss. These games play like piss. These games look like piss. Look at this landscape. Ho ho ho. Sorry, this is from the 25 million units selling Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. This is from 2010's Deadly Premonition. Not all that different, are they? This is what the power of the Xbox 360 and PS3 could truly do. Anyways, you should play these games. Who was the madman that decided to make an open world survival horror game? But it's really more of a detective game with a survival horror veneer. This guy. You explore this open world and investigate crimes, all on the trail of the Raincoat Killer. Spooky. A game where a killer kills only when it rains? Now that sounds very familiar, and both of them came out within a week of each other. Ooh. The characters are batshit crazy, like who the fuck is Zach? The imagery is immaculate. Sure, the cutscenes look like someone smeared them with dirt, but look at the artistry. How could this not be a cult classic with writing and voice acting like this? It's the interesting characters and the wacky world they inhabit, and the admittedly disturbing murder mystery they find themselves in, where the Deadly Premonition games truly shine. If you're looking for something that is polished out the wazoo and is the most innovative gaming experience you've ever had, no. But if you're looking for something that's different from the norm, then these auteurs are the ones for you. Then there's the second type. Apply everything I just said about passionate fan bases, innovative gameplay, and great twisting stories, and now turn that graphics and performance style to the not as shitty side, and then you just have to pile on heaps and heaps of critical acclaim. Keep those 9s and 10s rolling in, baby. All for a good reason, mind you. It's not like these games actually suck. Not only that, but these games also roll in the dough. The moolah, another word for money. Their games are known by most gamers, and they get the big awards on the big stage, right next to Big Jeff. Games by people like Sam Lake, the face of Max Payne, quite literally. Then there's Alan Wake, where you get an achievement for watching ads. Now that's the game direction you just don't see in other games. Or, David Cage, begrudgingly. Yes, I did put Cage in this group, because despite what the internet would have you believe, his games are critically praised. Other than Beyond Two Souls, that was pretty stinky. People make fun of Detroit Become Human all the time because of its bugs and its story, so they often forget the fact that it was nominated for several awards. It was seen as successful, and without him, we wouldn't have had the onset of climactic narrative adventure games. So whether you like it or not, David Cage is an auteur, and a pioneer. A pioneer in making shit games. I'm just kidding. Let's learn more about the guy, shall we? Oh. And then there's the big guy that everybody knows, Hideo Kojima, as well as his studio, Kojima Productions. Of all these guys, why is it always dudes? Maybe the game industry should do something about that. Anyways, all these guys have games that are viewed as the pinnacle of their genre, but they're nowhere near perfect. Yes, I will press the left and right triggers to keep my balance. It's the only thing keeping my mind from melting right now. For being a survival horror game, the survival horror in this survival horror is just pretty okay. There, that was my hot take for the day. My point is, people should feel okay to critique these games, because what's the reason for these guys to get better at their craft if we, the gamers, don't critique what is being made? Everybody can improve, even if you're at the top of your game. Also, I didn't say this with the last type because we all know these games have problems. But you know what both of these types have no matter what? Great style. Look at all those suits. And it goes without saying that these auteurs can shift between the two types. A perfect example is Yoko Taro. Goes from Dragon Guard's middling critical and commercial performance with a passionate fanbase that can somehow stomach the insane shit in these games to Nier, and even more so, Nier Automata. And now everybody and their mom can't wait to see what he comes up with next. All this talk isn't even touching the indie scene. It's hard to say whether or not you can have auteurs in the indie space, considering many of the most famous indie games are made by one person. There are plenty of small indie teams like Team Cherry of Hollow Knight fame, still waiting ever so patiently for the Big 2 to be released in 2053. Mark your calendars. Do you know of any indie teams where one person's the big name? I can't think of any at all. And on the other end of the spectrum, since there's only one flesh sack in the kitchen, are they really an auteur by our base definition from Google, who is still everybody's best friend? I don't know the logistics of it personally. I'm just going to say there are a few out there. Jonathan Blow, who made Braid and The Witness, which is a game that I beat without a guide, in case you forgot. I always make sure to remind you guys if it comes up. Lucas Pope. Oh, Papers, Please is my shit. I will stamp this passport and wish that pixelated terrorist a good day with gusto. Although, these people don't need my praise. So, you want to learn how to be like one of these guys? How do I get started? How long does it take? Do I have to put someone pissing themselves in my game to be one? Welcome to this lesson on how to be an auteur, by someone who's never worked a day in the video game industry. I cannot promise you that this will work, however. This is just some consistencies between a lot of the auteurs that I researched for this video. So, step 1. Hack into the gamer brain matrix. Pew, 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 pew. How do you do that? By having extensive experience with games growing up, of course. A lot of the video games that these auteurs played while they were young inspired them to get into the industry, so hence they use that experience to influence the games that they make in the future. But that doesn't mean that you should neglect the other arts. Kojima is famously known to have wanted to work in film growing up, but switched to video games once he saw the shift in people's perspective of them thanks to Super Mario Bros. And also because his mom told him he could be whatever he wanted to be, so that's adorable. He took his love for films and infused it into the games he worked on, like Snatcher, Police Knots, and of course, the big one, Penguin Adventure. It's important to take from everywhere, because if you just take from the video games you grew up playing, then we're all destined to run out of ideas eventually, and nobody wants to play a homogeneous glob of a game. Step 2. Work until you have no ass. Nobody starts off at the top, unless you pulled the triple bingo lottery and were born into a rich family, which I know isn't fair, but what you gonna do? None of these people started at the top. The Penguin Adventure joke from earlier wasn't even a joke. That's Kojima's first game, if you could guess, where he worked as one of the game's planners. Yoko Taro worked on games like Alpine Racer 2 and Time Crisis, I know that one, as a background designer. A lot of these people also didn't even initially want to work in video games. Shigeto Itoi, the guy most people associate with creating Earthbound/Mother, started as a copywriter. I don't understand how one does that, going from copywriter to video game creator, but the world works in mysterious ways. Did you also know that he's the president of the Japan Monopoly Association? That's kind of just a weird fact I found while making this video. Like, why does that even exist? This doesn't have anything to do with anything. Most of the time, you gotta start from the bottom and work your way into a position where you can show your stuff. Step 3. Profit. As every good game developer knows, that once you get your chance and create a cult classic, all you gotta do is keep at it, and then profit. It's just that simple, ladies and gentlemen. All it will take is a little bit of effort and like 30 years of your life, and you're set. That is, unless you get fired during that time as the video game industry continues to constrict and consolidate as big companies continue to buy up smaller studios and shut them down if they don't meet their ridiculous expectations. There's always the indie space. While yes, the auteur, the head honcho, is an important person in their video games development, they didn't do everything. So, you see what the big message of this video is? Is that everyone's needed in a team. So when the next game comes out from a big name auteur, just remember the guys and gals programming the horse physics.